Hi, folks. In U.S. history, early U.S. history, the 1840s were a very active time. First of all, you have to think of 1843 when Oregon fever took hold. What was Oregon fever? Well, it was the move west. We were continuing that drive west that was under the umbrella of manifest destiny. We believed we were supposed to conquer the continent. What was in Oregon? Well, fur trading for one thing. Missionaries were also pushing the opportunity to go to a land that had tremendous natural beauty. Now, when they moved there, the fur traders were interested in seeing more people participate in business. But something else was happening. The people in America who were moving west were people who wanted to go west. What I mean by it is this: there were certain people on the East Coast who didn't go west. One, usually the wealthy people didn't go west. Why? Because they were well established and they had their place in society and they didn't feel like changing that. That was one. The people who were not so wealthy, as in very unwealthy, as in maybe poor, didn't have the money to go west. So it was the people who had just enough money to get out of town that did it. And what they often did was they would go, say, for example, to Ohio first. They'd settle, start land, work land, and do what they can for a few years. Then they would move to Missouri for a little while and see what they could do there. And then, if not satisfied, they would go ahead and go to Oregon. So a lot of settlers did exactly that. They would move from place to place and finally end up in places like Oregon or maybe in California. Now, what would cause people to go to California? Finding gold. The California Gold Rush began in the mid 1840s. And so now there was a push to go west for the gold. At that same time, there was conflict with Mexico. And unfortunately, we went to war with them in 1846. So while all this stuff is happening in America, we have a challenge of fighting a war with Mexico. Something else happened in the mid 1840s, late 1840s, something called the Seneca Falls Convention. Why is that important? Women's rights. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott were very involved there. Now, they met in England a few years earlier. They went to try to go to an anti-slavery convention, and they were not allowed in because they were women. So they said, you know, it's time for a change. We need to have women have the right to vote, and we have to have women get more of a say in what happens in household affairs. We need women to have more say in community affairs. Women needed to have more rights, and it was the official beginning of the suffrage movement. So the Seneca Convention, which had several hundred attendees, first met in a Wesleyan chapel, then went to a Unitarian church. The fact is, this was the beginning of what was a very important movement in the women's movement in American history. On a darker side of our desire to go west was a situation involving the Donner Party, a very, very awful situation where a party of settlers who were trying to move west got lost in the Sierra Nevada mountains. What happened was, and it's one of those very odd quirks and odd events, where they got direction to go in a certain direction, go a certain way. Somebody said to them, hey, this is the best way to go. They took the advice of the people passing by, and they found themselves not only stuck, but in the middle of some very harsh weather. To the point where what happened? They ended up committing cannibalism. Humans eating humans. Gross. One young lady who was married, who had a Protestant background, made a commitment to God saying, if you get me out of here, I will convert to Catholicism for my father. She had a tenuous relationship with her dad because he had married a Catholic. So she wrote her dad, I'm converting, Dad. Very unusual time to be moving west, and a very critical time to have such an awful experience. They did finally make it, but it was a lot of death and a lot of cannibalism. It was just an awful experience, known as the Donner Party. But the 1840s, as you can say, were a time of great experience for the United States. Lots of stuff happening. And it was a time that America was really growing out and testing the edges. Fur trading in the Northwest, gold rush in the West, families moving west, Seneca Falls Convention, and a war with Mexico. Lively decade, lots going on, lots to learn about. Thanks for watching.